This is Beyond the Big Screen podcast with your host, Steve Guerra. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Big Screen podcast, where we talk about great movies and stories so great they should be movies. Links to learn more about our guest today can be found in the show notes. You can support Beyond the Big Screen on Patreon.com. By joining on Patreon, you help keep Beyond the Big Screen sustainable and get many great benefits. Go to patreon.com/Beyond the Big Screen to learn more and sign up. Find show notes, links to subscribe, and leave Apple Podcast reviews by going to our website, beyondthebigscreen.com. And now, let's go beyond the big screen.
Thank you for joining me again. I am really excited to be joined by author, director, and producer Nick Solazzi. Today, we're going to delve into some personal stories of Nick's and also get into some of the deeper and darker corners of where the mafia and American history in general collide. Nick, can you give us a little background on yourself to get us to know where you're coming from?
Well, my great uncle was Sam Giancana. And, I've had quite a colorful, life, growing up and having family relatives that were to that type of involvement was kind of like an abnormal normality, if it were. And it's just something, you kind of got used to growing up. And it was very interesting. Let's just put it that way. But what I'm dealing with here is Sam's other brother, Joseph, what we used to call him Pepe. Papine is the Italian name for Joseph. Him and I were very close. And he used to hang a lot at my dad's dealership and at the house and everything else. So the story that I'm telling is really the story of my uncle, Pepe Giancana, who was with his other brother, Sam, over the course of a couple of days during this assassination scenario. And the story that I'm telling is a story that he gave me.
Can you just give us a little context and background on Sam and Pepe Giancana and the whole mafia in Chicago?
Well, the mafia in Chicago was called the Outfit. And at the time, Tony Accardo was the boss for quite a while. And then back in the late 50s, when they had that big bust in northern New York, Appalachia, Sam Giancana and Tony Accardo were both there, but they both got away. And at that time, Tony Accardo thought that the heat was just a little bit too much at that particular time. And he's kind of semi-retired, and he appointed Sam Giancana the boss of the Outfit, although Tony Accardo remained more than consigliere. He was really still the silent boss. But Sam Giancana ran all the Outfit operations and handled all the business from the late 50s onward for quite a while. And that's kind of where, my story kind of jumps into, is when Sam became the acting boss. He had many operations in Chicago, and there was a casino that was above a steak place called Gus's Steak House in Chicago. And that casino above the steak joint is what Pepe ran. Pepe ran the books, the betting and whatnot on the West Side. He's the kind of guy you went to when you were laying off bets. But Gus's Steakhouse above it was a casino. It was that casino that Pepe ran. They were close. Pepe stayed out of, I would say, I would call him a white collar gangster. He wasn't involved in the heavy stuff. He wasn't a hitter. He didn't do things like that. He was basically a bookie, but they were very, very close. And he was with Sam those last couple of days with regard to the assassination. He was driving him around because the guys that were normally with him were down in Dallas. So he kind of was filling in for him.
It always seems to me that Chicago's mafia scene was really its own thing, separate almost from New York, that New York was such a behemoth, but Chicago stood up on its own and was at least had some independence from New York?
Well, it had all of the independence from New York. The problem with New York is there were 5 families. You had 5 boroughs, and you had 5 constant struggling for power. That was the big issue with New York. You really had the 5 boroughs. You had 5 heads, and they were constantly clashing for money, territory, power. In Chicago, you had one. That's it. You had one boss, and that's how the outfit was ran all the way from the very beginning. You had one boss, and you had captains that ran the outskirts of Chicago, whether it was the South Side, the West Side, the North Side, but they all answered to one guy. You didn't have that internal struggle. You didn't have that in-house constant fighting for boss territories. And I think, I don't want to say that's why it ran so smoothly, but that's why it was so organized. You didn't have that kind of struggle over there.
And they had they were running their own show. How did the Mafia interface and wind up so connected with a huge Boston Brahmin politician like the Kennedy family?
Well, look, my uncle used to say that the government and organized crime could not exist without each other. And you laugh, but it's pretty
true,
much true. They were interwoven. People don't understand that the government used to turn to the organized crime to do all the nasty things they couldn't figure out how to do. Before the CIA figured out how to take care of their own nasty spills, they went to organized crime. They dealt with them. They did a lot of assassinations for the government early on. So they worked hand in hand, and they really did not exist without the other. And quite frankly, that's why I think organized crime, or certainly the outfit, they felt so emboldened, because some of the time they felt like patriots because they were doing in their eyes something for the government. But they just couldn't exist without each other. And that's how they rose in power.
And then how did the Kennedys and the Giancana and the outfit get connected up together?
Well, everybody knows that Kennedy's old man, Joe, was, he was dealing with organized crime, running liquor, bootlegging. He used to run liquor and bootlegging down from Canada into the United States, and he was doing it with organized crime, and he was doing it with the Chicago outfit in the New York for a long, long time. So the father got them involved just because of the business, and that's what their introduction really was. But it was from their father, And I know where you're segueing is, how did all this kind of happen? Well, the father did turn to organized crime, certainly to his relationship with Giancana to help get his son elected, and that's where the votes came from.
It's interesting that Joe Kennedy, some scholars say that he didn't have any bootlegging connections because there's no written source for it. But I can't imagine somebody like Joe Kennedy was going to have his letterhead out there, Joseph Kennedy, bootlegger. What's some of the evidence that we have that he was, Joe himself got connected with the Giancana, Sam, and your uncles? Is there some documentary evidence? Did your uncles ever share anything with you about meeting with them?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, if iPhones and cell phones and cameras and all these things existed back then, we wouldn't even be talking to me. You would just go up to the camera up there on the corner in Dallas, and you'd just be able to see exactly what everything happened. But there's enough evidence out there. There are people that substantiated Kennedy was meeting. They have people that have substantiated Kennedy and Giancana meeting in New York, and also in Palm Springs, and all sorts of people have come forward talking about the meetings that both of them had. So I think people are pretty much past that.
Steve here. We are a member of the Parthenon Podcast Network, featuring great shows like Richard Lim's This American President and other great shows. Go to parthenonpodcast.com to learn more, and here is a quick word from our sponsors. I'm dying to hear it. I went to Dallas a couple of weeks ago and even spotted things out. Maybe take us from the beginning. What leads us up to November of 1963 and the Kennedy assassination?
Well, look, without giving the entire
The whole
movie
story.
away,
Yeah.
look, it's not, you know, we all know, and there's enough evidence out there that has substantiated that votes were swung via organized crime in the outfit to put Kennedy in. I know for a fact there was a gentleman named Al Smith. He used to tell me that him and Ruby actually were running to these different union places. That's where the whole ghost ballot nonsense came in. People that were dead were actually voting at the particular time, which helped swing the election in a couple of states. With the whole essence about how that situation came about was really less about the fact that they got Kennedy elected. Getting Kennedy elected and him turning their back on organized crime was just one real facet of it, but that's really not what happened. What happened was that Kennedy's brother was trying to dismantle organized crime. He was subpoenaing everybody that was out there, and the whole thing was put together because of the Kennedys trying to dismantle organized crime, and subpoenas were crawling up on everybody's lawn. That's why this happened. Not because Kennedy turned their back on him because they got him elected, it's because they were trying to destroy their business. That's why this thing was put together. And it wasn't necessarily put together in a day. It wasn't put together in a week. They tried several times to get to Kennedy to talk him out of it. There's evidence that they met with Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy had talked to the kids. The kids couldn't believe that the father was actually doing business with them. But that's really where the essence of how this thing came to be.
Was your uncles, were they expecting that getting JFK elected, that were they hoping that the best would be that the federal government would just turn a blind eye, or were they expecting a quid pro quo out of that?
Quid pro quo. The father had told them that you help get my kid elected, I will talk to them and have them back off all these investigations. That's what this was about. Again, it's important to understand that it wasn't about Kennedy turning his back on them once he got elected. It was about them trying to dismantle organized crime, trying to dismantle their particular business. And they did try to speak to Kennedy several times to get to him, to have them back off. But it was something that they just weren't going to do. The brother was just determined to dismantle them. And that's what this was really about. There's so many different facets that came in, but the situation was really put together between Giancana and Trafficani down there in Florida. That's what this was really, this was the head of the two individuals that really put this together. From what Pepe told me, Gambino knew about it, but he wasn't involved. Carlos sanctioned it, but the deal was really put together between both of them. And it was funny because Pepe had me laughing because he said to me, I know one person that hates Kennedy more than you. And he goes, who? He goes, Carlos Marcello. And that's how Carlos got involved. He got involved because Sancho had brought them in. And his contribution was really helping out with the, as they call it, the patsy. Now, you have to remember something. Oswald could have hit. He was there, but this was really about what if he misses. Roselli was sent down there to make sure that if Oswald misses, he was the backup. And that's why Roselli had gone down there. Roselli had gone down there as the backup. And Nicoletti's job was to get rid of Oswald. Oswald was never going to make it out of there. Whether he hit, whether he did it or not did it, Chucky Nicoletti's job was to kill him, bury him, burn him, and get rid of the ashes. That's what his job was down there.
stepping outside of that, there's so many what we might call quote unquote conspiracy theories. I'll probably get in trouble for this. I think the Warren Commission's really the beyond the belief thing. How do you think that this idea fits in with some of the other more, I guess, mainstream conspiracy theories, you might call them? Is there sort of a unifying theory that that pulls in a lot of these ideas? Because, I mean, let's just be honest, the idea that one bullet from Oswald and Oswald was a lone gunman, it's almost preposterous.
Well, there wasn't one bullet. And if you look into everything that's gone on, there was a forensic investigation after the Warren Commission. It was determined that there were 2 bullets. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't know, the Warren Commission withheld a lot of information. There were about 100 people that testified, that a bullet came from this particular direction. There was a father that said that I jumped on my son because the bullet was coming basically over my head. People know that the FBI and the Secret Service ran towards that direction because that's where they heard the bullet come from. Testimony after testimony after testimony. There was a woman that testified that saw the shooting with regard to Tippit and Oswald, said that Tippit was pulling up. Someone got out of a car. Tippit pulled up to Oswald. They started yelling. The gunfire that Oswald had run away, and the guy that got out of the car chased after Oswald. I mean, there's testimony to all of this. There was testimony that someone went to his house, asked if Oswald was there. The woman that was renting the house to Oswald said that, yeah, I think he was there, but I think he left and ran down the street. All this type of situation. You know, I think another thing that people don't understand, and maybe you know, do you know how much time went by between the assassination of Kennedy and when Oswald was picked up?
I was interested in hearing that. How much time was that elapsed?
I think 48 minutes. So let me ask you, 48 minutes ran by. 10,000 people are running all over the streets. There's chaos everywhere, but they happen to know exactly where to go and where to find this particular guy. Oswald was picked out of nowhere on the street. Oh, you must be the guy. Is that what people are trying to expect, that Tippit out of nowhere picked this guy up? You know, there's evidence now that Tippit was in Ruby's bar 3 nights before. People have testified to that. Government withheld all that information. And to think that all this took place in 48 minutes by chance is absolutely absurd. People now have Roselli and Nicoletti down there. If you keep following all this particular evidence, they have them down there, and then all of a sudden they disappear, and all of a sudden they pick them back up after that. You know, the Warren Commission had said, oh, Oswald got the gun from L.A., right? Now we know it came from Goodman's Klein's sporting goods store out of Chicago. All evidence to that. Even people that were were involved in the Warren Commission had said, this is the shoddiest nonsense I've ever heard in my life. I don't even believe it. And another thing that people don't even know, Robert Kennedy Jr., the son of the Attorney General that was heading the investigation, then himself was assassinated, said some years ago, this is out there, that his father never believed the Warren Commission, thought it was a shoddy piece of evidence, felt very guilty, and believed that it was his investigation of organized crime that put this, that did it to his brother. But do you know that he had done his own private investigation a year after the Warren Commission, the father? And do you know they hired an investigation? Do you know that they pulled the phone records of Ruby and Oswald? And do you know that he said the phone records had that the people that were calling them and that they were calling was all the members of organized crime that they were investigating? This is out there. Did you also know that Ruby, some months after he was, you know, obviously being held because of the his Oswald shooting, had said to one of the people that I want to talk to, Earl Warren, if he gets me out of here, I'll tell him everything he wants to know. I'll tell him, you know, who did what, on and on and on. And that Warren had showed up. He had said to the senator that my life ain't really worth a nickel here, but if you get me out, I'll tell you everything you want to know. And he was told, well, son, if your life ain't worth a nickel, I would suggest you not say anything.
Fascinating. Can you, Bill, for the people who aren't quite as familiar, who Tippett is
Tippett
or was?
Tippett was a police officer in Dallas. And there's a lot to be said about him, but he was friends with Ruby. And he was the cop that was able to get the parade route over to Ruby, and how Ruby got the parade route over to Roselli. So we call him a crooked cop. He's also the cop, technically, that had found Oswald, several blocks from where he was renting a house. And he's the cop that Oswald had killed, fled into a restaurant. Nicoletti chased him, and then fled into the theater. And that's where he was finally picked up.
When you're making a film about something like this that has so many facets to it, and it's such a complicated story, how do you pull in all of these threads into a visual medium?
Well, you know what? It's complicated, but not as complicated as you would think. It's like the Titanic. We all know how it ends. We also know how this ends, right? So what I'm really doing is taking the last 48 hours, and I'm placing the audience like a fly on the wall, and I'm having the film really work in real time. And you're basically watching individuals, the people that were responsible for it, doing things in real time. And you're going to have to catch up to where they're at, because these people aren't necessarily explaining what it is they're doing. They're just doing it. So you're watching them do it. So we're compressing stuff happening in real time where the audience kind of knows where the ending is. So you're really just watching these group of individuals move in real time from Chicago down in Dallas. The one thing that was very interesting that Pepe had told me, he was down in my his brother's basement before they all took off. They drove down there, they didn't fly. And Roselli was kind of nervous about going. And he joked about to Pepe. He kept saying, am I going to see you again? Am I going to see you again? Because he kind of knew going down there, there was a probability that maybe he wasn't going to make it out. There was this distrust between Roselli and Nicoletti as well. Johnny Roselli was kind of more loyal to Giancana. Nicoletti, on the other hand, which was a South Side hitter, was loyal to Ricardo. So both of them kind of thought the other was going to take the other out. That was kind of like the tension of those two kind of going down there. But he was telling me that Roselli was a nervous wreck, that like hours before he was vomiting quite a bit. He had these bad ulcers, but he was in his bathroom vomiting, that the tension, it really got to him. You have to also realize they didn't quite know what they were going to do when they got down there. They had an idea because they kind of had inside information of kind of how the route was going to go. They knew they had to be someplace in there, but they didn't quite know how they were going to go about doing it. And they had no idea it was going to be successful. This was really just kind of winging the situation. And as I told you, Oswald had an opportunity to actually hit. He missed. And that's kind of what had happened when he was up there. And he took the first shot and he knew he missed. And he was kind of chambering the other one. He heard the other shot go off. And he knew it wasn't him. And he figured he got set up, so he threw the gun down and was running out. And as he ran out the front, Tippett and Nicoletti were waiting because he thought he was going to come down, get in the car, and they were going to drive him down to the border. Now, there's already evidence that $200,000 or $300,000 was placed in an account down there from him. So they thought they were going to get him out into Mexico. But when he saw he saw and heard the second shot go off, he ran down. He knew he was set up, and he screamed at them. I'm not going to start swearing, but he screamed, "He goes, F you, I'm not getting in the car with you." And he took off, and he hopped into a bus, and they were following him around. He went around the block with the bus, kind of went off and got off the bus and kind of got into a cab and went back to his house. But they were basically following him. And then Nicoletti was screaming at Tippett saying, "You know, you're a cop, you know where he lives, let's get to his house." but he knew he got set up.
It's a really unique spot, that spot in Dallas. You picture Dallas now with all the tall skyscrapers, but this is an old town, and where Oswald was shooting from, they make you kind of picture it in your when they describe it as that it was a really super long shot that you'd have to be some sort of sniper. It's somebody who could throw a baseball pretty well, could have hit that.
That's exactly right. And, people say, well, Roselli, how was he that good of a shot? Again, a lot of people don't know the history of Johnny Roselli. We all know now because of the dossier drop that the CIA hired Sam Giancana and Roselli to kill Castro. Now, you know that, right?
Sure, yeah.
You can read it for yourself.
Yeah.
There's no disputing it. And the reason why we know it is because the FBI was following Sam Giancana, right? But the CIA didn't know that. So Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli go down to the Fontainebleau down there in Miami, meet with Mayhew from the CIA, and that's where the CIA hired Giancana to kill Fidel Castro. Now, the FBI was following Giancana, so they taped Giancana and Roselli with the CIA making the deal. You can't write a movie like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of where that had come up. And obviously, had they been successful, they would have given back their casinos. And there was a lot for the organized crime and the outfit to benefit off something like that going on. But they did it because they felt they were patriots. They offered him $200,000. And you know how the deal was actually put together? Giancana was dating Phyllis McGuire at the time. And he thought that she was cheating on him with Dan Rowan, which was the comedian partner in Vegas. And Giancana asked the CIA that he'll do the job, but I want you to bug her dressing room, because he wanted to find out if she was cheating on him. So the CIA actually bugged his dressing room. But when they were preparing for this attempt to kill Castro, Roselli was in charge of putting together the group down there in Gator Ridge. And he used to go down there, and he was in charge of putting what you'd call these mercenaries together to get on the island to pull this off. So down there, when they were training, is where he learned how to shoot really well. And a lot of people just don't understand the I wouldn't even call it the simplicity of why he had to do it, but he was actually a very, very good shot. And, after that debacle with the Bay of Pigs, his hatred for Kennedy was just unbelievable. He lost a lot of good people and friends because of that situation. So to him, it was personal. He wanted to do it.
Steve here again with a quick word from our sponsors. Without giving away too much, what was the outcome that Giancana was expecting? You're basically doing not only the crime of the century, maybe the crime of the entire existence of the United States. What was he expecting on the day after this, if the assassination went through, which it did? Obviously, there's going to be some heat coming down on this. What was his maybe goal?
Well, the goal is you cut the head off the serpent and then the body dies. As complicated or as big of an issue as you would all think of it, they didn't really look at it that way. They looked at it as just business, and they didn't really have any respect for that. Unfortunately, they had no respect for the Kennedys at that particular time. As far as they were concerned, it was quid pro quo. They did something for them. They expected something in return. And to them, it was really saving a corporation throughout the entire country. They expected to what happened. Everything did go away. The investigations did pretty much slow down and stop. So the result that they actually wanted actually did occur. Now, the investigation to the assassinations was open down the line, and they didn't expect down the line that all these subpoenas would be happening, and Giancana being brought in, and Roselli being brought in, and Nicoletti being brought in, and everything else like that. But the result that they expected to happen did happen.
Because in a lot of ways, it did take so much heat off of them, off of the whole mafia, that the mafia grew during the 70s, 60s,
well, the
and
60s.
70s.
I mean, look how big they got in the 60s. the 70s, they move into Vegas, and that became a whole different animal at that particular time. But the net result is what they wanted.
Can you maybe just explain to us a little bit about the process of making a movie? And again, you don't have to get into all of the details, but it's a fascinating process. And I don't get to speak to many filmmakers and writers. It sounds like a very interesting process.
Well, it is. The creative process is extremely rewarding. I actually got lucky where, as a writer, you're sitting here trying to create a story and you're writing up all your beats. Normally, every beat's about 5 pages, and then, you go on and on. So you need to have about 20 beats per film, My uncle gave me the story. So I was actually able to have the beats already kind of being written out for me. But I wanted to put this together with the energy, the excitement, and the confusion and the fear that they had when they went down there. Because as Pepe was telling me, he said, this was like organized chaos. And they didn't really know what was going to happen every other minute. And I wanted to portray that into the screenplay. So it was very exciting for me to have this kind of 24-hour feeling. So if you remember the series 24,
sure,
the script and the film is very much like that. It has that kind of roller coaster, nonstop, non-sleep, in your face, biting, pow type of feel to it. So it was very exciting to be able to write something like that. So after that, you put it together. I have a producer, Kevin DeWalt, that's working with me. He has got a company called Mind's Eye. And at this point, we go out and you get yourself your director. And after you get your director, you start moving forward and you're putting the right actors. And, for me, it's more important that these characters who are real people that I knew are portrayed correctly. It's much more difficult where it's not like you're casting a role for a doctor or a lawyer. It's anybody America. You can cross all over the place and just get the best person for the role. This is very specific. It's a genre. You have to try to fit the mold. So it's not as easy to find somebody that can portray these people the way they were. It was a different era back then. There was a very crude type of organic behavior about these individuals. They were very sophisticated in a very small way of thinking. And it's much harder to find those people that can really, really fit into that particular role. But it's exciting and it's challenging. I've gotten several offers for distribution, several offers from talking to studios that really want to get involved in this project early on. I think there's a lot of curiosity about this. Again, this isn't my story. It's my uncle's story that was with Sam. One interesting thing I will say, the moment of the assassination, remember, this parade was not a national parade, wasn't on TV. It was just local, wasn't really a big deal, right? So my uncle Pepe was with my other uncle, and he happened to be at the house at the time. Now, my cousin Franny was home, his daughter, one of the daughters. And she said to me, it was very strange that my dad was home at this particular time, because this was like around noon, 12:30, 1 o'clock, it was early in the day, and normally he's gone. She said, but not that day. He was home. He had the TV on, he had the radio on. He was waiting for something, and they were sitting there. And then she said, finally, it broke in. The president was shot. There was an assassination. She said he turned to Pepe, and he said, okay, good. We got him. Let's go.
Wow.
And she said, I was standing there, and she goes, he didn't look that surprised. But she said he made that kind of a comment. They got up and left. This is fair, and this is also a scene in the film. I'm telling you that because this blurb is out. And then Pepe had told me that from there they went to Ricardo's house. And the funny thing about this is, sure, let me back up. It's not, none of it's funny. It's very tragic, and I'm not trying to make this. I'm not trying to sensationalize it. I'm not trying, and I think it's a very tragic situation. All I'm doing is telling a story. I'm not trying to make glib of any of this stuff. It's very serious, and I just wanted to, roll it out. But Pepe said they went to Ricardo's house, and Ricardo had always said that they thought that they got the wrong Kennedy. That Ricardo was actually thinking they should have just taken the brother out, and not necessarily Robert Kennedy. But he was convinced that they needed to do the president. But they talked about just hitting the brother. And Ricardo always felt that he got the wrong Kennedy.
I think it's so important you bring up that nobody's making light of this. If you're looking at it, we're trying to find the truth in what's going on here. And it definitely is not a laughing matter to try and find the truth.
There's no pride into telling this story. It's very tragic. And I battled it for quite a while, whether I even wanted to do something like this. But I'm working with Sam's other daughter, Bonnie, Giancana, who, validates a lot of the things that I'm saying, because she was with the dad quite a bit, and, you listen to a lot of things. And I said to her, she'd call me, she goes, "Do you see all this BS on TV? You see all this crap? They keep rolling out all these crazy stories about it." And I said, well, they're going to keep doing it until we say it. They're going to keep doing these things and telling these things and doing these dumb documentaries until we put the story out and do it once and for all. And it's only when she agreed to work with me that I felt comfortable to do it. I had this story before that, and she didn't want to get involved. And then when she decided to get involved is when I decided to roll it out.
Do you have any thought of doing a documentary or something, or writing a book that goes in parallel to this?
Do I have any thought?
Yeah, or any idea to do that?
I thought about it. I do. I did think about doing that, and I decided to just kind of roll into a visual and tell the story and let the people put the people into the place and kind of let their voices do it instead of my voice. So I figured, let me just write the story and let individuals adapt to the real people that were down there. And I thought it'd be probably more impactful to allow people to listen and hear it and feel it in real time, happening in real time from the voices of Chucky Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli that were down there.
Where can people find out more about the project, when it's going to be released, more details about when this movie will be released, and where to learn more?
Yeah, well, I'm about to make a few deals, and as these deals are being inked, there'll be press releases that will be rolling out. So I think that's probably it. Every now and then, just kind of hit 2 days, 1963, go on IMDb, take a look at my page when I say my IMDb thing. But as we get more attachments, but I could tell you we're going to make it for sure. We're going to make it in 2023. Just so happens to be the 60th year anniversary. It just happened to work out that way. It wasn't something that we had thought about, but we're going to make the film next year, probably during the summer.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much just in this talk, and I can't wait to see the movie.
Well, I appreciate that. Look, the reason why I'm here doing this is because, and people keep asking questions about it, because what they've heard before didn't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, people keep asking questions. No one felt comfortable with it. No one bought it. If you look into a lot of the dossier drops that have happened, you'll hear a lot of senators, you hear a lot of stuff that people just couldn't believe, that Nobody bought that story. Nobody, from the top on down. And when you see some of the stuff that was released, I think you start to see all the pieces that have come together. You'll start to understand. But, to cap this off, the tragedy of all of it is, they back in the 70s, they opened up this assassination scenario. They had new evidence that what was done with the Warren Commission was wrong. Now they knew there was another gun. They knew there was another shooter because there was another gun going off. There was ballistics. There was much more intelligence to allow more research. So what did they do? They subpoenaed Sam Giancana. They subpoenaed John Arizelli, and they subpoenaed Chuck Nicoletti, all the individuals that they had surveillance on that they knew were down there. And they gave Sam Giancana immunity, 1,000% immunity, because he was going to take the fifth again. And they said, no, it doesn't matter how many people you've killed. If you've killed 2,000 people, even someone on the way in, you're not going to go to jail. So you're going to have to testify. They said the same thing to John Arizelli and Chuck Nicoletti. Oddly enough, days before they were going to go and testify, each one were killed, all of them. Arizelli was killed, Nicoletti was killed, and of course, my uncle was killed in his basement, all before they were going to go and testify, where they were given complete immunity, specifically about the assassination of Kennedy and a little bit of Castro. All of them were killed.